How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Monsters. This is Season 3, Episode 17, and this one's entitled Leavings. It originally aired January 20th, 1991, was directed by John Tillinger, and stars Clifton James, John Christopher Jones, and Tony Shalhoub. Adrian Monk himself is in this episode. Always great to see a familiar face. In addition to Monk, he was in Galaxy Quest. On this channel, I talked about the movie Imposter. He was the best friend from work in that movie. Again, super cool to see him here, and he does a pretty good job. The episode itself, though, it didn't quite work. And I want to say I didn't hate this episode or anything, but there are some major problems with it. And the first thing is those first two acts. This is a very cheap Monsters episode, and by that I mean we have basically just one room, and we'll get characters talking in that room for pretty much 2 acts there, and they try to make the talking interesting. They're talking about this conspiracy where something is taking the body parts of the homeless people in New York City. Okay, that's a cool little conspiracy episode. That's an interesting enough concept. And the actors are giving it their all. When they have to, talk about this disturbing thing they saw, they do their best to be captivating and try to show the weight that this job is taken on them. We do get some fun moments where one of the characters talks about, I saw a man and the entire inside of his mouth, his teeth and tongue were just missing. Okay, that's a creepy visual. I get that. It's cool. But there wasn't really enough to do here, And it doesn't leave enough room for this episode to move and grow. Like a very similar episode, A Shave and a Haircut, 2 Bites, there was a lot of stuff to talk about in that. They ran through the whole vampire barber conspiracy in that one, and I think it helped because one of the characters knew a lot more. In this, all they can really talk about is something's going on and we don't know what, but I couldn't help but think we need more to go on in these first 2 acts, especially if we're just sitting in a room talking. Needless to say, we do get a 3rd act reveal. I won't spoil it, I won't say what it is. However, we are watching Monsters, so there will be a special effect. However, the special effects in this episode were more on the cheesy, campy side. I can't say I hated them, a few of them made me smile. They were a little, fun and cheesy, but they weren't that dark and disturbing reveal that they probably hoped for. If you thought about it, you thought about a few of the gags and what they could really translate into, maybe that's more disturbing, but that's not really how it read on film. So yeah, the ending of this episode is kind of underwhelming, and when they explain what was going on, let's just say it got kind of implausible. There is a good idea there, but the way they were saying they were doing it did not 100% buy it. But whatever, there are some highlights to this episode. The concept is interesting enough and the actors really are trying their best. It just didn't quite have enough meat on the bones this time around, I guess you could say. But I guess in order to analyze it further, I do want to talk a bit about the plot. I'll be avoiding the end bits, so no major spoilers, but I do want to break down and analyze a few plot points, so from here on out, let's take a deeper dive. We open up with Tony Shalhoub and his partner, and they're in a room with a homeless man who's got a blanket covering him, and they're kind of nervous. It sounds like there's something going on that some of the officers have started to become aware of, but the upper levels are trying to squash the story and sweep everything under the rug. But Tony Shalhoub has something now, some concrete evidence, and they're going to confront them. This guy, an inspector, comes in and says, okay, what do you want to show me? And they move the blanket, and it turns out this homeless man has no arms. Not just no arms though, but it's clean cut, like no scars or anything. And the inspector says it looks like he was just born this way. And Tony Shalhoub says, no, we saw this guy yesterday. He definitely had arms. And then the guy himself starts chiming in. I thought I found a good place to sleep, but I guess I didn't. I woke woke up with no arms. Why did they take my arms? Was it because I was bad or something? So we've established that this guy definitely had arms before, but something took them. Tony Shalhoub gets his partner talking. At first he's hesitant, but then he starts to open up and he starts to describe some horrifying things he's seen throughout the city that people are just kind of ignoring. And there's some good stories in here, but again, because we can't go past the point of, well, that's strange, it is spreading the first two acts kind of thin, and I wish there was more they could do. Eventually, the partner does say, I saw something else though that might explain what's going on, and Tony Shalhoub at first tries to hold him back, which I don't quite get, because you think you just got this guy to open up and now you're trying to hold him back, but I guess he thinks the idea that he has is too ridiculous or something. But we're talking about body part stealers. I don't think so. But after he drops this other thing he's seen, and I won't spoil what it is, but I think a few of you might be able to guess. But after he drops that, the inspector starts to take them more seriously, and we actually get, I think, 2 points in this episode where they leave the cops alone, and Tony Shalhoub is like, this isn't right, they shouldn't leave us alone, they're treating us like we're suspects. It's like they're trying to interrogate us, but we're the cops, you know? And that does give a little bit of a twist to it. You know, start off saying that we think the upper management knows and they just don't want to hear about it, and now they're kind of going after these cops that are trying to bring it up. We get a bit of a conspiracy angle here, so that's always cool. And then we get into that final act, and as I said, the special effects are more on the cheesy side than they should be, but you know, it's kind of fun. But when they get to the end, and I won't spoil it, and they say, this is what's really up, I don't quite buy it. And part of it's like, can you believe we're doing all this and no one's noticing? And really, I can't. I mean, these cops notice, but I think a lot of people would. And then they try to say like the scope and the scale of it, and I'm like, I do not think you're getting away with this at that scope and that scale. It just, yeah, no, the idea of what this cover-up's trying to say, you know, about society, I get that and that works, but you can't have this goofy reveal at the end and say, yeah, that's working, right? Because it really doesn't look like it would work. Overall, though, the episode has its moments. Like I said, Tony Shalhoub does a good job in here, and some of the stories are kind of fun, but it is just an episode of Monsters that didn't have enough budget. It was spread a little bit too thin, but the core idea is okay. It just didn't pan out 100%. Overall, it's a B-side. It's not great, but again, I didn't hate it and it had its moments, so whatever, right? Anyway though, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Monsters playlist. If you guys want to see me talk about past episodes of the show, you should be able to find them there. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Monsters playlist here. Have a good day now.